Hey everybody, it's Bob from ILikeToMakeStuff. Thanks for joining us tonight on this episode of BrainPick. And before we get started, I wanted to remind you about a podcast that I do called Making It, and it's with Jimmy DiResta and David Picciuto. We have a new episode that will be out this Friday. We're having a blast doing the podcast and getting some really good feedback and some really good questions from people, and would love to have you listen and do the same. Give us some feedback. Let us know some topics you'd like to hear about. So you can find out all about that podcast at makingitpodcast.com. You can download it on iTunes. You can get it on your Android podcast app, whatever you use. So be sure to go check that out. So tonight we have Matt Cremona. Matt does awesome woodworking. He's a super nice guy. He has an infectious laugh that everybody loves. And so thanks for being on the show, Matt. How you doing?
Doing fantastic, Bob. Thanks for having me. It's a complete honor for me to be here.
Oh, well, I'm glad to have you. Matt's a great guy. We talk on a regular basis, and I get to meet Matt in Woodworking in America in North Carolina, and that was really cool. So I'm really glad to have Matt on here because he's doing some really awesome woodworking. And if for some odd reason you're watching this and you've never seen his channel, you need to go watch his channel. So Matt, we got a bunch of questions started, and we'll get to those, but first I want to kind of hear how you got started in woodworking. I mean, you have I'll let you tell about your process from tree to project a little bit, but I think you have a unique perspective there on the whole process. So tell us how you got started.
Yeah, the tree thing came a little bit later. So back when I was in college in 2008, I started working for my landlords, doing stuff around the houses they had rented out, and I was living in one of them. And one of the first things I did was remove all the carpet in the house I was living in because they had hardwood floors underneath all the carpet. And on the staircase, it was painted like 4 or 5 times. So the first thing I did as far as woodworking goes in my whole life was refinishing that staircase. And that got me into this whole there's like beauty in the wood and stuff like that. And we had this hutch that was in that basement of that same house that was painted and it was in disrepair. So I took it upon myself as the first project to strip that thing and repair some of it. And the repairs got me into the actual woodworking side of things. I had to replace one of the sides with a new one and replace some of the other parts. So I was making some new woodworking parts that way. And then it really kind of took off when my wife and I went to this fancy Swedish furniture store, and she found this bin basket that she really wanted. And I thought to myself, well, I could probably make something like that or make something even better than what they had there. And my wife kind of laughed at me because I hadn't ever built anything before, and she figured that I was just kind of pulling her leg and she would probably never get the thing she wanted. But I built it, and then that was kind of like the first thing ever made, and it just kind of went from there. Just took off.
Awesome. Well, tell us about the wood, the milling process that you're kind of famous for now.
Yeah, I do that with my friend Jim. I started doing that with him about 2.5 years ago now. I met him in the summer of 2012, and I met him just to go there and buy lumber from him. My neighbor knew I was a woodworker, and he was friends with Jim, and he introduced me to him, and he said, yeah, go to take a look at some wood. So I went out there, and I bought some, and I also offered to help him. And I don't think he understood what me helping someone was like, because I get really, really into things, and I really drove him to be out there all the time cutting wood and making lumber. So that's been a really fun experience for me, just being able to. It's I've never been out in the I've been out in the woods, but I've never been out in the woods with cutting down trees and pulling them out and then having a sawmill there and then milling boards and all that. That was all a new experience to me. But as a woodworker, it was a natural progression.
Gotcha. And so you do, for anybody that doesn't know, you do the entire milling process. I mean, you have done the entire milling process, right?
Yep, cut down a tree, like the doors behind me. I cut down that tree, pull it out of the woods, put it on the mill, cut the boards, dried the boards, and now it's a door on the secretary.
That's awesome. Very awesome. So there's another question down here from Mike. Hey, Mike. Matt, who do you find is your average customer when it comes to purchasing lumber from you?
I get all kinds of people, but mostly all hobbyists, which is a lot of fun for me because I get to talk to a lot of people and they get to see the shop and they're really excited when they see the shop. Because a lot of people the interesting thing about selling lumber to whoever wants to come by is you don't really know how much you're going to buy. So sometimes they'll come by, they'll pick through all your boards, and they won't buy anything. And you're like, well, just wasted an hour of my life, and they won't talk to you, and it'll be a really awkward and boring experience. But sometimes someone will come by, and you'll have an awesome, awesome conversation with them, and I don't care if they buy wood or not. I was talking to someone about woodworking, and that's more important to me than actually selling something to someone. And then there's times that someone comes by and says, yeah, I'll take it all. And you're like, oh, I got to cancel all the 4 appointments I had for you because I thought I was going to have more lumber to sell.
That's a good problem to have. Nice. All right. Well, here's a good one from Dima. I just have to do it. Hey, Dima. If you were a tree, what type of tree would you be?
One that wasn't going to get cut down.
There you go. Excellent answer. All right, let's move on here. How do you think YouTube has changed your woodworking or making hobby?
That's an interesting question. It's certainly, with the shop updates, it's really forced me to actually be out here doing things every week, whereas before I could get away with not being in the shop and not doing anything for a week. But by doing those shop updates, it really motivates me to have something done to show people. Because it'd be a really, really boring update for me to be like, yeah, I was out here all week, have a nice day. So it really gets me into the shop more. And the one thing I like about doing the videos is being able to share and communicate with the whole community out there and really give back. Because I'm all self-taught, so I went online to learn about everything that I know. So it's really fun for me to be able to contribute back to those people that are just getting into the hobby now.
Right on. All right, I was looking at the secretary behind you, which is, obviously the big thing that you've been doing on YouTube for a long time. And there's a question about it here from Jay Bates. The secretary build is quite an undertaking, and it's looking amazing so far. Have you any plans for what the next big project will be, or are you going to take a break from large, complex projects?
I do have a next project in mind, and it's going to be a baby crib.
Why are you going to make a baby crib, Matt?
It is for my child that will be coming to this world. Well, it's already in this world, but will be born in July, so I will be building a crib.
Sweet! Congratulations.
Thank you.
So,
I'm excited.
You guys were a part of the first baby announcement on BrainPick in the history of the world. That's awesome, man. I'm really excited for you. I mean, everybody, if anybody knows me, they know that I have kids, and I'm really passionate about my kids, so that's really exciting. So, good for you.
I'm super excited. Well, we both are. Me and Lindsay are both really excited.
Good. And a baby crib should be an interesting project. I mean, do you have a style? Do you have anything worked out on that yet?
Yeah, well, we looked. Well, like what most people do is they'll go to like the furniture stores and see what's out there in the mass-produced world, and then I can kind of draw my ideas from there. But what we were looking at is, the basic. I guess like a square spindle style from the front and the back, but the back is taller than the front, and then the sides connect at an S curve, or it'd be an S curve up to the top. Well, that's the plan, at least,
awesome.
Right now.
And so, but it's not going to take as long as the secretary, right? Because the baby will be like 3 years old. But
no, I have a deadline, so.
Okay, that's good. Oh, that might help. Maybe you should have had a deadline for the secretary. But no, that's awesome. That's great. Oh, there's lots of congratulations going on in the questions here.
Thank you, everyone.
Let's see here. Let's move on. I saw another good one. Actually, I got an email from somebody that wasn't going to be able to watch, but he wanted to make sure I got a question to you. Okay. So this is from Andrew Larson, and he says, if money, space, tools were no object, what would your ultimate build be?
Hello, Andrew. How are you doing? Andrew's a good friend of mine.
Oh, cool.
We talk a lot. Anyway, I think probably what everyone would say would be like this big, giant shop, because I don't have a problem with money, so I can buy a whole plot of land. I would probably buy a big wooded plot of land and have a sawmill and know my own trees and have a big shop and then have a whole bunch of more tools than this, because that sounds pretty awesome. But that is probably never going to happen.
You never know. You never know. Yeah, that's cool. I think that is pretty common. Everybody's like, I just need more space. So that would be a fantastic.
Yeah, the more space thing for sure. It's like, well, even like the funny thing about more space is you always find ways to fill it up anyway. So it's kind of like you're just chasing your tail on that one. But there is a point where you're, like too little space is just too little space.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so here's another one from the Wildman Project. Matt, what is your favorite hand tool and why?
My favorite hand tool is my dovetail saw because my wife got it for me, and it is super expensive, and it's like one of those luxury fun gifts. It's over here. But what I like about it a lot is that they're all handmade down in La Crosse, Wisconsin, which is where I went to undergrad and where I met my wife. So it's sort of sentimental in that sense too. That's my favorite tool by far.
Nice. What about power tools? Just because I'm curious, what's your favorite power tool?
Probably my jointer, just because it's so ridiculous and makes my life so much easier.
Because it's gigantic.
Yeah, well, just being able to flatten anything, you're like, well, not anything, but anything up to 12 inches wide. It just changes the way you work because you don't have to worry about things being uneven. And just the fact that it's such a quality machine, it's able to get things so well milled that you don't have any problems down the line. And that's the first step in all of your milling anyway. So if that machine gets it right, all the other ones are a lot easier to use and set up, and your joinery comes out easier and better than if it was poorly milled or not consistent thickness or off square or something.
Right. Now, we've talked, in the past about the milling process. So I'm curious. You told me a bunch of stuff I didn't know about it, and so I wonder if maybe that would be helpful to some of the other people listening. So you said something about the. I'll let you tell it because you said it better. But it was something about the milling process and the cost, like how they're relative. Can you explain that?
Oh, like the cost of materials?
Yeah, like the more milled, the more expensive, or something.
Yeah, so the further you get from the source, the more expensive the material gets. And I guess that would be, is it technically exponential? I don't know if that's exponential or linear. I don't know the math terms, but so a tree, like a tree in the woods is worth whatever, 50 cents. Let's say 50 cents for a tree in the woods. You cut down that tree, it becomes a log, it's worth $1. You cut that log up into boards that are wet, it's worth, where am I now? $2. You dry that lumber, it's worth $4, and then if you surface that that wood to like S4 or S or something, then it's worth $8. So the further back into the line of that material you can get, the cheaper your material cost is going to be.
Right. So that's why it's so expensive for us to buy lumber at especially hardwoods and stuff at like a big box store because it's all the way at the end of that chain. So.
Oh yeah, and they're even further down because they have in the further steps now they're like buying from a wholesaler, so they're not even they have the sawmill mills the wood and sells it to the wholesaler. The wholesaler then distributes that to other points. So now you have another person in the chain. Whereas if you went straight to a sawmill, it'd be even cheaper. Well, it'd be closer.
Yeah. I thought that was really cool when he told me about it, so I thought maybe that would be useful to you guys listening. All right, so here's a good one from Jesse. What kind of wood will you name your baby after?
Probably not spalted. That would be bad.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll leave that to Lindsay.
Okay.
I don't think she wants any wood names.
Yeah, probably not. I think that would be a hard one to convince the spouse of. Let's see here. Here's one from Nick Ferry. What is one dream tool you haven't used yet but you want to try?
A dream tool? I gotta look around. Like, what am I missing? I think you stumped me.
Maybe not a dream tool. Maybe just something that you're interested in that you haven't, you've never actually gotten a chance to use or.
See, there's tools that I want, but I've used them.
Okay, what's something you don't have that you want to have? How about that?
A sawmill.
A sawmill, like a big, huge sawmill.
Yeah, like a big portable band sawmill. That's what I would want, for sure. That would be a lot of fun. Or a trailer. I really want a trailer.
Just for getting the lumber back and forth?
Yeah, it's a lot easier than putting the back of my pickup. I can move a lot more, and then it'd be easier for me to go out and salvage logs from around the city. Something I want to do more of.
Let's see.
Or a bobcat. I would also want a bobcat.
Oh yeah, that would be good. But you used one of those a lot when you were doing your back porch, right?
I did. That's Jim's Bobcat.
Nice. So
Yeah,
you have
they're a lot of
access to
fun.
one, so that's basically like having one.
I guess. It's always fun to have your own, though.
Oh yeah, of course. It'd be much more dangerous with your own Bobcat than you would with someone else's.
Yeah,
All
I
right,
guess.
here's another one.
I see the way Jim drives his. He's pretty dangerous at that, though.
Oh, there you go. Well, you got room to then. Do you guys find your technical background seeping into your woodwork? I'm sure it's helped you with the digital side of the business, but in what ways do you see it helping or hurting? I can take that one first.
Yeah, go for it.
I think it's helped me a lot from the plan perspective because I use SketchUp to kind of pre-visualize some stuff, which I mean I used to do on paper, so it's not like that's a necessary thing, but it has helped me work out some problems ahead of time, which has been nice, and have like a model to go back and correct. Like if I've found a problem that I could fix when I'm actually making it, then I can go back to the model and correct that model. So it's been helpful that way, and of course it helps on the business side of things to just to have familiarity with web technology and all that stuff. But as far as hurting, there may be some traditionalists that think that having technical digital stuff could hurt you, but I think it's just like having another tool. It's like being a hand tool user and then deciding to start using power tools while using the computer to help your process or help your end product. I mean, that's just kind of another set of tools for me personally. What about you?
Pretty much exactly the same thing, to be honest. I use SketchUp for pretty much just kind of get an idea of what I want to make, what the dimensions are going to be, like the rough dimensions, because I don't like plans. I don't go off plans. I don't like them because they kind of constrain you to this perfect world of things you're trying to get to, where I like to take the other way where I'm like, here's the wood I want to use. Now what dimensions or what things can I make with these boards to make the best project with these boards as possible. So, like for example, just to go on a little bit of a tangent, the coffee table I built last summer, that was originally supposed to be 24 inches wide. Well, I had boards that were 11 inches wide, so I was only going to like just glue two 11-inch wide boards together and then throw like a 2-inch strip on it just to get 24 inches. No, I changed the whole thing to be 22 inches wide so I could use those boards as my top. That's kind of the way I go with that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, so do you work backwards that way? I mean, do you come back and adjust your plans to the material, or do you just keep that in mind, the material in mind, when you're doing the plans in the first place?
Depends how like complicated the project is. So like for that table, I knew the overhang, so I knew the top was going to be that wide, and then every single dimension on that table is based off of that top, because there's an overhang that you want, so that dictates the width of the top or the subtop and the shelf, and that'll dictate your divider widths and the drawer sizes and all that stuff too. So with a lot of things that I build, or a lot of things that most people build, they probably don't think about it, but there is one dimension that sets the whole project up as far as the rest of the dimensions for every single piece that comes after it. In the case of a table, it's usually the top.
That's good stuff. That's good to know. I mean, that's a key point that may not be obvious unless it's something you've actually sat down to design something, not just build something.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Yeah. What is your method of learning new skills? For example, do you cut 100 dovetails from scraps, read books, watch videos, or just lots of projects? That's Jonathan Conrad. Hey, Jonathan.
I practice on the projects. I have cut over 100 dovetails, but not on scraps. I think I've only cut dovetails on scraps once for an example for my videos. But every other time I want to learn something or do something, it's always, for me, it needs to be on the actual project because there's more risk, and I like that feeling. I don't know why. It's like, oh, I have the risk of actually damaging this piece that is very critical to the actual project. So that, I don't know what that does for me, but it kind of makes me want to do it better, and I need to make it work to get to that end point, or else there's no other option. I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you're more motivated to do it right and to pay more attention to what you're doing if there's some risk to it. So
Yeah, and I
Makes sense.
know every time I do it, the better I'll get at it, and then I'll actually see the improvement over time. And that's most obvious with dovetails. For anybody that's ever tried to do dovetails, you'll do your first one and be like, it went together. It doesn't look that great, but you'd be pretty proud of it. And then a year later, after cutting 100 of them, you go back and look at that, and you're like, well, that's kind of iffy, but at least you have that ability to go back and see that, oh, look at the actual, you can actually see the improvement, which is it's just incredible.
Hmm. Now, I'm curious with the secretary desk that you're doing. There's so many components to it. There's so many different types of cuts, and there's curves, and there's just all sorts of stuff.
It's a lot of techniques.
Yeah, there's a lot of different techniques in that. So, did you have anything in that process that like you really just screwed up? Did you do anything just totally wrong to where you're like, this is unfixable. I have to start over on this piece or this joint or this whatever.
I don't think so. I don't know. I don't think so. The part of being a woodworker is being able to fix those mistakes and having those mistakes in your back pocket. If I've done this before, I know how to fix it. I know a way of getting around it. You can't fix cutting things too short, but I haven't had that problem yet on this project. But like on the bead that goes around the door panels, there is on the top of the arch, there's like a big chunk that got torn out when I was routing that bead. But I could fix that with some of the scrap that was cut off when I was making the tenon so that the color would match. So I took some of that wood and made a little patch, glued it in, and now you can't really tell that that whole chunk was missing.
Awesome. That's a good thing. I mean, yeah, I guess having the the knowledge and the ingenuity to fix those problems maybe cuts down on the.
Yeah, I make all kinds of mistakes. And it's just being able to, it's really, everyone makes mistakes, so it's being able to know what a good course of action is to correct that mistake or to, I don't want to say hide it, but, make it go away.
Yeah, hide it. It's okay to say hide it. Somebody said something to me one time. I may have already said this on a show before, but it always sticks with me, and I think about it all the time. That like when you're building a house, the point of all the work that you're doing is covering up the previous step. And so every time I'm working on something, I think about that, that you're always just you're trying to refine the previous ugliness, and trying to make it a little bit more refined and a little bit more refined until you get to the final thing. So,
Yeah,
so
that's true.
it doesn't make me feel too bad about making mistakes because I can usually just refine it and cover it up with something. So.
Yeah, that's an excellent point.
Here's one from Izzy. If you had to pick one whoa, I lost the question as usual. If you had to pick one wood over the other, would you be out in the woods or milling lumber or out in the shop woodworking?
Oh,
It's a good one.
that's hard. I don't know. Luckily, I don't have to make that decision.
That's a decent answer.
I like them so much. They're so different, but they go hand in hand so well. I don't know. I like being in the shop because it's more comfortable, but I really, really enjoy a really hard day's work too. So I don't know. Why you ask me these questions, Izzy?
That's fine. You can think about it. Maybe
Okay, we'll get back
decide
to it.
on one later or not. You don't have to make the choice, so it's okay. Here's one from Mark Lindsay. Where did you find that big ol' honkin' beam saw, and where can I get one?
eBay. Actually, I got that one on eBay. They still make them. They're a little more expensive if you buy them brand new. That one's from Makita. They're used for timber framers. So that one there can cut a 6x6 in one pass.
Wow. How long does it take to cut a 6x6?
Oh, like just cutting a 2x4 with a circular saw, Zzz.
That's crazy. You should do a video of that. I think people would like to see you cut through a 6x6.
Oh, I did my workbench top. I have a video of that in my shop update from last February when I cut this thing to length. That's 4 5/8 inches thick, and I cut the whole width of it, which is 24 inches.
Well, that's more than a 6x6, so we'll take that. All right, we got another one here from the Wildman Project. Matt, do you have any other hobbies?
Making videos, I guess now it's a hobby. I used to be into photography, and I was also into like video games and stuff like that when I was in college. And then I started doing this, and it really just took over my whole life, to be honest. I don't really have any other hobbies anymore, unless you consider like cutting wood a hobby.
Yeah, going out in the woods and cutting down trees sounds like a hobby.
It's a lot of fun. How about you?
Oh, me? Oh, I have tons of hobbies that I don't have time to do. I mean, I used to play music a lot, and I don't get to do that anymore. Just because you're right. Once you start down this path of like you make a thing, and then you want to make a video for the thing, and then that motivates you to do more of those two things, and it just consumes your time.
Yep.
In a good way. But yeah, it makes it hard to justify like I'm not going to do a video this week so that I can go fiddle around on the guitar for a while, or whatever the thing is. But as you'll find out, having kids makes you you have to justify the time that you want to use for things. Internally, I mean, you have to just decide like how you want to use your time. So let's see here, Matt, did you ever think of a trade like cabinet making as a way of woodworking for a living? It's a good question.
Not really, I guess. Just really came into this as more of a hobby kind of thing, but I know making a living just building things is really hard. Just because people don't, well, it depends on the person, but the typical mindset of today's world is that people don't want to pay that kind of money for things that we make, typically. Unless you can find those people. There's still those people who are out there. They're just hard to find. So, I mean, like the hardest thing about trying to sell something that I make, for instance, is the price tag that has to go with it. Because if I want to value my time at all, it's got to be, thousands of dollars for a piece of furniture, and that's not really all that common in today's world.
Yeah, and another part of that is that if you're, and this is something I worry about and kind of struggle with, is if you're making things for a living, you have a maximum velocity, right?
Yes.
There is a cap as to how much you can physically produce. I mean, there's just, one person can only do so much stuff. And so even if you were to be able to make a living selling those things, it feels like there would be a cap. Now, I guess maybe as you build your business or build your reputation, then you can, charge more for that same amount of time. Maybe that's the trade-off. But I do worry about that cap.
Oh yeah, because your time is limited, and your ability to get through projects is limited as well. It's not an infinite thing. So absolutely, that's what concerns me the most about doing something like this, or doing this building furniture for a living, is I can only make so much furniture per hour, per day, per year, or whatever, and then hopefully then you gotta sell it. And there's other things that go on top of woodworking as a business, marketing. All that stuff that goes on top of all the overhead. Your time is really limited, so I don't know. It's possible, but you really have to hustle at it.
Yeah, that seems like it's a pretty hard hustle, I would think. So there's a couple of more questions floating around. I don't see them specifically right now, but about pricing. There's one like, how do you go about pricing your work? And there was another one about, do you have a rough estimate of cost for your secretary desk? Is that something you've figured out? Is it even possible to figure that out?
If I had to do it again, I would have a pretty good estimate of how long it would take me to make a second one. I've been kind of doing this one, dabbling on it here and there, but I have over 200 hours into it already. To make another one would probably be more like, I don't know, 150 hours or something like that, somewhere in there probably, and it would probably improve as I went, but I don't know, what's 150 hours of your time worth, or anyone's time's worth? Whoever asked the question, how much do you get paid per hour right now? How much is that time worth?
Yeah.
And are you willing to pay that for a piece of furniture? I mean, some people are. That's fine. That's awesome when they are, but it's not a very big market.
Yeah, and that's why a lot of like rustic furniture. Let me qualify that. Like, simple rustic furniture, because there is some rustic style furniture that's very complex. So that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the very fast, like chairs made out of 2 pallets stuck together and things like that. That's why those things can be relatively productive, and you can make a little bit of money on them because the investment that you as a maker are putting into them is less than making a fine piece of furniture that you're making. So even though the margin is different, like the profit margin is different per piece when you look at smaller items, or items where the just the labor is less, you know. So that's why I think people are having success on Etsy and things like that, and even like craft shows, because they're batching smaller pieces with less effort, and then your margin is just a little bit better. So
yeah, exactly. I'm not a production shop, unfortunately. Well, unfortunately and unfortunately, I'm not here mass producing things, so.
You're not a high production shop.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Yeah, me neither. Let's see. One of the bad things about talking and listening is that I don't get to actually look at the questions. So sorry about that.
Sorry, I'm so interesting.
Let's see. This is interesting. It seems like everybody's shop has fluorescent lighting, mine included. But isn't that the type of lighting found in most people's living rooms? Does this ever complicate your finishing techniques?
I think it improves it. At least in my shop, because I have really good lighting in here. So that really, really helps me to be able to see any kind of defects or how the wood's going to look under optimal lighting conditions. But as far as coloring goes, I have daylight balance bulbs in here, and most people probably don't have those in their house. But I don't do any coloring on my pieces anyway, so I don't really care. Like I can say I don't care, but it doesn't really concern me because I put a natural finish on everything. I just put a clear coat on everything. Whatever color of furniture I want, I make it out of that natural color of wood. So like, if I want something red, it's gonna be cherry. If I want something dark, it's gonna be out of walnut. If I want something light, it's gonna be out of maple, or whatever.
Yeah, I think the color temperature is a really good thing that you brought up, because the color temperature of light bulbs is something that a lot of people may not even consider, not even think about, but it changes the way, and especially for anybody listening that makes videos, the color temperature of your bulbs is really, really important, because if you see a video that looks yellowish, that's because they're using a certain color of bulb. And when you see like my video right now, you can see it's like very white, very blue, and these are daylight bulbs, which is same thing you use. But so if you're making videos or you're going to be doing finishing or whatever the case may be, if the color is an issue, the color of the light, then you want to change your color temperature in your bulbs. And so the daylight, there's variation on what the actual temperatures are that people would want to use, but 5000 K is what I have in here. So when you see my videos and you see this video right now, just for reference, the temperature of these bulbs is 5000 K. So
mine are 6.5.
Yeah, those are pretty similar. I mean, as far as like what they visibly look like, but once you start getting down into the 3000 range, that's when it starts to look a lot different. And it's not a bad thing, it's just a different type of, different look. So it's especially important in photography and videography. Let's see, Bob, you like to make stuff. Do you have any plans outside of woodworking on BrainPick? Not hating, just wondering. No, I'm really glad you asked that. I do. I absolutely do. In fact, the guy that was supposed to be on next episode is not going to be a woodworker. He's not even a maker. He's just a super interesting guy. I'm having some scheduling problems, and so that's going to have to wait, so I won't go into that now. But yeah, the next guy, just since we're on the topic, the next episode of BrainPick is going to be on the 17th of February, and it's going to be with Kyle Toth. Kyle is like ridiculously awesome. Talented. So, and he is not known as not as well known as he should be for the amount of talent that he has. So I really hope, if you've never heard of Kyle Toth, T-O-T-H, go look him up after this. Not right now, but go look him up and look at his work, because it's beautiful and ridiculous. But to your question, yes, I absolutely do. I want to make sure that this show in the future is relevant to the people that have started watching it for making and woodworking, but I also want to spread it out a little bit into people that are just really good at what they do, no matter what that is. So if it's something physical, like making leather goods or metal goods or whatever, that's fine. But if it's somebody that's just really good at making videos or making music or businesses or whatever, I just want eventually to move out to people that are just awesome at what they do, as long as what they do is relevant to and helpful for you guys. So that's kind of my goal. So if you have any suggestions for that, yeah, send them to me on Facebook or on Twitter or something like that. That would be awesome to get. I've got a bunch of suggestions, but especially if you have suggestions for guests outside of woodworking, outside of the making space, send them to me. I'd love to hear that. If you had a choice,
more choice questions.
Yeah, there's a lot of choice questions. If you had a choice, would you rather have a router table or a shaper, and why?
I've never had a shaper.
There's a tool you don't have. That answers the earlier question.
I guess, but that's a very interesting question, because it's like one of these big debate topics in woodworking is, do you need a shaper, or you should just get a router table, or does it matter? And I just have a router table, and it seems to be doing me just fine, and I don't even have that powerful of a router in it. Shapers are just crazy. It's a lot of power spinning that bit, but the nice thing with the shapers are they do take router bits as well, so I think the router table became really popular because of its low cost, because you already have a router. All you have to do is flip it upside down and you got a router table. But yeah, shaper would be nice to have, I guess, at some point if I really needed to, especially for like pattern routing. That'd be really handy for that, because you can get the sweet actual pattern bits for it that have little carbide inserts on them, so it looks like a little helical head on your joint or your planer. That'd be sweet. Also scary, but sweet.
Tools in general are
yeah.
sweet, but scary. Let's see. Here's another one from Jonathan Conrad. How many pieces of furniture have you built, minus the secretary? Which one were you the most proud of? That's a good question.
I don't know the actual count. Probably 30, maybe.
Oh wow! Like, give me a roundabout of all the different stuff you've made.
I made, let's see, like a mission coffee table, an end table. That was my first like solid wood project. I made a TV stand for my in-laws back in the day, back when I was really getting started. Made a sofa table and TV stand that matched that coffee table I built this past summer. That I was supposed to have one in my own living room, but that was a wedding gift for someone else. So my wife is still waiting for a matching coffee table. Got those. I made some of those reproduction spice boxes. I made 6 of those, and that was the most ridiculous thing I've ever made in my life, because I made 6 of them. They have over 100 parts, and I don't know how many dovetail joints. I don't know, 30 or 40 individual dovetail joints per box. 13 drawers. Each one has half-blind dovetails in the front, 3 dovetails in the back, and that's a great project for anyone who wants to start learning how to do dovetails, because you'll make your 13 drawers, you go back to your first drawer, you look at your last drawer, and you're like, I sucked back then, and that was only a couple days ago. And those are probably the most proud thing I've made, just because they're so nice looking, and by far the nicest thing I've ever made until this thing's done, and then that is taking the title for sure.
Yeah, I think it absolutely should. And if it doesn't, I would love to see the thing that's eating it. Well, you should. I mean, I know you've probably posted pictures of some of that other stuff, but you should, figure out a way to show off in some of your videos some of those older pieces that maybe aren't as visible. People would love to see them, I'm sure.
You can check out my website, mattcremona.com. I've got a portfolio section there that I am still working to expand upon, but it has pretty much all of my more prouder pieces listed there.
I would like to congratulate you on that seamless transition to plug for your website. That was fantastic. Good job. No, seriously, everybody, go check his site out, because that would be a good way to see the pieces that he's talking about. All right, so here's another good one that I like from Guy's Woodshop for both. What is driving you to share your craft with us? I know the amount of work that goes into videos both of you produce. Is it to be a contributing member of the community, to share knowledge, skills with others? I'll give Matt a break from talking for a minute, and I'll say, just for a second, but for me, I started making videos, started making blog posts about projects and stuff, and I found that the response from people who said, like, oh, I didn't realize this was as realistic to make as you've shown it to be. That just got me completely fired up, and it changed, hearing that on a regular basis, it changed the reason why I started making those things in the first place. And So then I started looking for projects or looking for things that like from the outside, from the idea stage, seemed really complicated, but then when you get into actually doing them, I mean, I've said this before in a lot of other places, it's, big problems are just a collection of small problems, and I think when people can see that, when you can break it down and show them the small problems, they go, yeah, I can fix a small problem. I can fix 100 small problems, which means I can fix a big problem. So once I've seen that happen in people, it's just super motivating for me to do more of that and to make the videos the way I make them and about the things that I make them about, to try to inspire people to not necessarily make what I'm making, but to go make the thing that they want to make, the thing that's important for them. So that's why I do it. What about you, Matt?
Pretty similar, actually. I just love it. It's so much fun, and it's so rewarding to be able to put myself out there and show the things that I make and how to make things the way that I do. And I get so much great feedback from everyone. It's incredible the support that I get. And I'm sure you get it from the same way from the people who watch your videos. I get so many amazing comments and emails just saying like how much people enjoy my videos because it just makes it seem so simple. And I never really thought to think about like, well, is it really that simple? Yeah, and just like you were saying, it's just a collection of smaller problems. When I was making the video to make the style of door with an integral bead in it, you look at that construction and you're like, oh, I don't know how to make that. That's crazy. But then you break it out into individual steps, and it's no different from anything else you've ever made before. You know how to use I'm generalizing, but you know how to use a router, you know how to make a Morse and tendon joint, you know how to make a panel. Just put those skills and concepts together, and then in the right order, and then you have that door, for instance. It's just, I don't know, it's so much fun. It's so rewarding.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's really motivating. The reward you get from that is just motivating you to do more and more of it, and it seems to get more and more fun too, which is kind of weird. I half expected it to start becoming work, right? You're like, oh, I gotta make another video, but now I'm like, yeah, I get to make another video.
Yeah.
Here's another one from Steve Carmichael. Hey, Steve. Matt, is there any tool that you have that intimidates you, or are you still early in the learning curve?
I guess he can't really specify anymore. But I was thinking like if it was like intimidating, like safety-wise, or like scary to use, or intimidating that I just don't know how to use it.
Yeah, I think those are all kind of similar.
I guess. Safety-wise, I don't. If I don't feel comfortable doing something, I won't. That's just my general thing. But I feel comfortable with most of the things that I do, or everything that I do, just because I can take that moment to think like, okay, how's this going to work, or how's this tool work, and then what's the physics involved here. And going on a tangent real quick, cutting down a tree is like the most, it's like the best example of what anyone should consider when they're doing something that's inherently dangerous. Because when you're cutting down a tree, you actually have to look at the tree and like think in your head, what is physically going to happen here? What, like which way is it leaning naturally? Which way do I want it to go? How can I make it go in the direction I want it to? There are limbs out there that's going to be pulling it this way. So you can kind of visualize in your head before you even start cutting how that whole cut is going to go and how that tree is going to come down to the ground. That same concept can be brought into your workshop, doing anything in here with anything, because a blade spinning in this direction, so I should probably not feed it in a direction where it's going to shoot it back at me because I'm feeding it with the direction of the bit, for instance. All that stuff. So that was a kind of weird tangent, but I think it's valuable.
Yeah, absolutely.
As far as intimidating things that I haven't tried that I'm intimidated to try, nothing yet at all. I like trying different things and trying different tools and trying different techniques. So nothing is really intimidating me as far as tools go. Technique-wise, that's kind of the fun part of doing a new technique, is trying something new and kind of putting that in your hat as a new thing you can do. Like this week I did the fan carvings. I've never carved anything before, and I was really excited to try it. That wasn't intimidating, but it was certainly challenging just to get over that hump of, I've never done this before, where do I even start? And well, for me, that's just start doing it, and you'll figure it out.
Yeah, it makes sense. So you're talking about the, thinking ahead about the physics of stuff before you actually do a thing with a tool. Have you had any injury in the shop? Have you gotten hurt by any tools?
I've had two things that I'll share that are valuable. There are only two things that, well, besides stabbing myself constantly with my chisels, I do that way too much. Um, when I first got married, I got one of these sweet dealies right here, right? And I came out in the shop for the first time after being married, and I was wearing this thing. And I don't wear my ring in the shop anymore at all. Well, I do now because I came in here for the show, but um, way too dangerous for me. My fingers are weird, so my ring is really loose when it's down here because my knuckles are big, so it has to clear my knuckle and then get down there. So when I was back in the shop, I was feeding a board over the table saw, and then I was pulling it back to make like another rip cut on it, and the corner of the board got caught on my ring, and I just had this complete feeling of in control. I just lost control of the situation. And I was extremely lucky that that board didn't somehow get like turned back into the back of the blade and thrown back at me, which would be totally possible. But just that absolute feeling of not having control of the situation, because I was expecting that board to just come through my hand and keep going, but it didn't. It stopped. So that was it was scary, and I learned my lesson the first time on that one. So I don't even bother wearing my ring in here anymore. The other thing was just the carelessness of not paying attention to where things are. The way I have my shop set up, my planer is here, so boards feed behind me. They'll feed out this way. And I have about 9.5 feet from wall to wall of space to feed a board through, so I can plane up to like a 9.5 foot board. I was doing that, and on the end of the planer, the board's coming off the end of the planer. I was just holding the board, waiting for it to come off. Well, what's over there? It's my table. And when that board on a 400-pound planer keep pushing, your hand is there and it's hitting the table, well, it's going to keep going. So I crushed my hand. Luckily, I didn't break anything, but the planer actually moved itself, which is how hard that thing will push. Those planers are no joke. They have serrated feed rollers, and they don't stop pushing for nothing. So that planer walked across the floor a couple feet, and I was pinned. Nothing I could do. I was stuck there. But luckily, I was fine.
How'd you get out of it?
It just kept feeding. So the planers kept feeding, so eventually ran out of board to feed.
Oh, right.
The planer was walking itself across the floor.
That's scary. That's very scary. I wouldn't have even considered that as a...
Yeah, just simple thing like that. Like, I was just kind of like off my own little mind, listening to my music on my headphones or whatever. Just kind of dancing, doing my thing, waiting for the board to come off the planer, just holding it, ready to catch it, and all of a sudden I'm pinned. And that was extremely scary. But I seriously thought I broke my hand, but it was fine. A little bruising, it was fine.
Oh, well, everybody keep that in mind. I have kind of it's not really a similar thing, but since we're talking about like tips like that, I find that often that, I have a work table that's not really a true outfeed table. Like, it doesn't really line up with my table saw. It's just a little bit lower. Mm-hmm. So I can feed things over it, but it doesn't really line up. But so often when I'm working on a project, I'm putting it together, it's on this table, which is right in the space of outfeed from the table saw. And so I often get in the work mode and I'm just moving, and I have to go cut something down, and I go to rip a piece and I get halfway through the rip and realize that there's something on my table in the way that's blocking this thing. And it's happened on a few occasions, and normally I notice that in a time that I can safely lift the board out of the thing, but a few times it's gotten to a point where like there's just too much going on right now, and I don't know which way to move safely. And so that's happened enough times that now I'm a lot more cautious of it, just to make sure that the path is clear, when ripping something. Because you're right, that could be very, very dangerous if you get in a place where you're like pushing something through and it's stopped in the back, and if you try to pull it out, you're going to bind, and it's just going to be bad. So another tip for people, don't do that. All right, well, we got about 10 more minutes. There's a lot of questions.
Good.
I'm not going to get to them all. But I'll try to get through a few more of them. See, I saw one up here somewhere. It's from Joel Crawford. In a fight between Bob's beard and Matt's hair, who would win? I can just go ahead and tell you that Matt's hair and beard would destroy me, both. They're too massive, too unwieldy. I couldn't compete, and I wouldn't even try.
Thank you, Joel.
Good old Joel. All right, how many drying cycles a year can you get out of your solar kiln? From Eli.
Quite a bit more than we actually do. It's empty right now because we just didn't feel like putting anything in it. But so when we cut the wood, usually it's stacking and drying for a few months before it actually has time to go into the kiln, because the kiln's only so big and we cut a lot more wood than we can put in the kiln. So usually the wood that goes into the kiln is probably it's under 30% for sure, but it's probably like in the 25 range, which is where you want it anyway. And taking a stack of wood down from 25 to under 10 in a kiln takes 3 to 4 weeks. So 12, 15 cycles if you really were like, I'm going to get as much wood through this thing as possible.
Gotcha.
And that kiln can do, you could squeeze about 700 board feet in that kiln.
Wow. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Here's another one from Jackman Carpentry. I would love to get into milling my own lumber. If you don't have much land or buddies with land, do you have any suggestions on how to get your hands on some trees?
Absolutely. There's people cutting down trees all the time, so depending on where you live, it's probably trees somewhere where you live. I've had a lot of great success on Craigslist, just kind of looking out there for people that are having their trees removed from their yard, because people can save money if they don't have to have the tree removals, the tree service take all that stuff out of there. So they're more than happy for you to come in and take that whole tree from them, and they'll just maybe chip the brush or whatever. But Craigslist for sure, people are always cutting down trees. The dump, wherever the tree service people take their trees, take the trees when they cut them down. That's where you want to be.
That's a good tip. I wouldn't have thought of that. Seems like they would probably stop you from trying to take them from there if it's like city, property or county property or whatever. But
yeah, I don't know. It depends. I guess it depends on the municipality. But most of the time, you can go right in there and be like, yeah, because they want to get rid of that stuff too. They're like, yeah, sure, whatever, take it. It's waste. It's garbage. That's what people think of that stuff. It's stuff they want to get rid of. It's garbage. It's waste. What do they care? Take it off their hands. You're doing them a favor.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I've never gotten anything off Craigslist around here as far as lumber, but I've seen a lot of it. There are a lot of people, with trees to get rid of. Oftentimes I've seen them, they've been already sectioned down pretty small, so they would be pretty short because they've expected a service to take them or the city to take them.
They cut them for firewood because that's more people will take it for firewood. But if you can, if you put a wanted ad up there, to say like if you're having a tree removed, let me know ahead of time and have the tree service leave it as long a length as possible. In your neighborhood, that's how I got my first tree that I cut with my chainsaw mill. That's the reason I got my chainsaw mill, was my neighbor across the street was having their tree removed, and I told them just to have the tree service leave anything bigger than a foot in diameter on the lawn and as big as pieces as possible, and I'll take care of it. So I got the whole trunk, and I got a whole bunch of like the upper stuff, the upper canopy as well, and I cut it all up with my chainsaw mill, and I got like a couple hundred board feet of lumber for, well, not free, but there was some work involved.
For sweat. Yeah.
For sweat equity, yes, and the investment in a chainsaw mill.
That's awesome. Another thing to keep an eye on Craigslist for is, this is not for the milling side of things, but just for wood. I know recently there was a guy here that I think he inherited a bunch of wood from a family member or something. I'm not exactly sure the situation, but there was a guy with a whole bunch of hardwood, all kinds, and he didn't want it. He wanted it gone. And so he was just like, make me an offer, like $50, as much wood as you can carry, or whatever the deal was, And so I don't think something like that would be too common, but it does happen. I mean, I've been to a woodworker here, passed away, and his daughter was kind of doing the same thing. She had to clear house. She had to get rid of. He was a cabinet maker, and he had 2 shops full of tools, full of wood, a lot of it very old. That's how I got my lathe. That's where my lathe came from. And
nice.
She was just trying to get rid of it all, because she didn't know what to do with it. And so it may not be terribly common, but there are things like that, and a lot of that ends up in Craigslist. So
Yeah, I'm on Craigslist every day. I go through the tools, the materials, and the free section every day just to see what's out there.
nice, good suggestion. All right, we got time for maybe two more. There's a good one here. I really am curious about your answer. So, if you could trade shops with anyone from YouTube, whose would you pick?
Either Mark's or Frank's. Mark Spagnola or Frank Howarth.
Ooh.
Either of those two would be fine with me.
Yeah, no doubt. I think I would have to go with Frank's. Frank's shop is beautiful. I may not even actually use it. I may just go in there and sit and just kind of look at it all, But
yeah, it's a beautiful structure too. He did a great job designing that thing.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really great shops on YouTube, but Frank's would definitely be my pick. So. Let's see here. There's another one about selling stuff, and may or may not have a good answer for this, but how do you market your projects or products, and do you commission work more or products for display? So, and I guess with that, I know you've made a bunch of cutting boards
Yep.
and a lot of other things like that, but what other stuff do you sell when you sell things? Just for some context for how you market.
Yeah, I don't really sell a whole lot of furniture pieces. The ones that go outside of my house are usually gifts, or occasionally they're commissioned, but I don't really do a whole lot of large piece commissions or sales of them. So it's a lot easier to sell those smaller things, and I sell cutting boards like you said, and turnings. I do a lot of bowls. They'll sell pretty well. And most of that's all just friends and family really. I don't really do a whole lot of marketing on the product side. Not yet, at least.
Ooh. That's some foreshadowing there.
It could be. You have to wait and see.
Well, I'm kind of the same way. Anything that when I started doing videos, I was going into the assumption that I would make a bunch of stuff and sell it to make money here, and then I would make many videos to make some money there, and try to do those two things. And I found really quickly that trying to do both of those at the same time was just too much, and I didn't enjoy making stuff and then sitting on it and hoping it would sell.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of trouble with that. And I know some people do that. A lot of people do that. That's great. For me, I found that my joy was in the video and in that side of things. But so now if I don't do any marketing of the pieces that I sell. It's more just the same thing as you. It's like friends and family. They know that I can make something for them, and
yeah.
And then I have a few commission people that come back to me on a regular basis and want a big piece or a whole lot of something, multiples of something, and those are well paying. So those are relationships I keep open, but I don't kind of actively market that stuff. I actively market everything else I do.
Commissions are hard too because there's a lot of work that goes into getting that commission set up. There's a lot of overhead. There's a lot of back and forth with the customer. Because you have to have all that discussion up front with them, on it depends on how complicated the project is, but the design, the materials, exactly how it's going to look. You have a lot of upfront cost just in time getting that commission situated before you can start actually working on it.
Yeah. There's another one here about more the craft fair circuit, not the commission stuff. Did you guys ever go on the craft fair circuit? David Picciuto did a couple of YouTube segments on the logistics of that gambit. Did you ever try that angle? Was it profitable, and do you recommend it? Have you ever done any craft show things?
I have not.
I have done. I've never done a craft show in the way that he's done them, but I have tried to sell. I tried to sell some of my stuff in store in a West Elm in Atlanta. And I was invited there by the store. There were a handful of people invited to sell over a weekend, to bring our stuff in, have a mini booth inside the store, and they promoted it as a local maker thingy. And so that was one of those cases where I spent a whole lot of time making a whole bunch of stuff, taking it in, expecting to at least sell some of it, and make some money. And I spent several weeks preparing for this thing, and I sold $140 worth of stuff. which Atlanta is 4 hours from here. So that was like basically gas money, you know? And so that was one of those moments where I like walked out of there going, no, this is not my thing. It's just not my deal, you know? I think if you knew the places to go, maybe a craft fair would be a different situation. So I think if you knew the places to go and you knew how to price your stuff competitively and to be, you know, to stand out in that situation, I think you could do it and make some good money. But I found very quickly that that type of thing was not for me. So here's a good one to here's a good one to end it from Lynn at Darwin over. Hey, Matt and Bob, would you guys consider yourselves more makers or woodworkers? Now, this is a whole big discussion that we're not going to have right now about what the difference is, or is there a difference, or whatever, and that's not what she's trying to say. I don't think it is. That is a really good discussion that I think people should be having. Maybe not should be having, that I think is an interesting discussion for people to have. But just for us, do you consider I would assume you consider yourself more a woodworker, right?
What I do here is definitely woodworking, and I definitely consider myself a woodworker, but I'm a maker at heart. I just choose to use wood as my medium.
Good
My primary
answer.
medium, I guess. I make other things. I don't have a problem doing that. I made a patio. That was masonry.
Yeah, you did. You made quite a patio. Yeah, that's an excellent point, and I think that's the discussion that I think people don't have, or whatever. They get too tied up in the material.
Yeah.
And like, and even the technique. I mean, you know, if you're going to be a really good woodworker, there's a lot of really specific technique that takes a long time to learn and stuff. So I understand why people get tied up in that. But yeah, from my perspective, I mean, I'm a maker. I say that I don't even call myself a woodworker ever. You've never heard me call myself a woodworker because I don't think I am. I'm not good at it. I'm not. You know, it's a medium. It's a way to make things cheaply. It's cheaper than welding a bookcase. You know, you can make it out of wood. So that's the thing that I do. But you're right. You're totally right. The desire to make things out of other things or out of materials is the core of no matter what material you use, no matter what industry you're in, any of that stuff. So I think people maybe make a separation there that shouldn't be made or doesn't need to be made or whatever.
Yeah, I agree.
But I think it's an interesting discussion that it kind of gets clouded over a little bit on YouTube. You know, people I feel like are maybe in their camp and they're, you know, they think like the other guys are over there doing that thing and I'm over here doing this thing. And
yeah.
I think everybody would learn a whole lot more if there was a little more, you know, cohesion happening there between the.
I think there should be, because if you're going to be a woodworker, you're going to be a metalworker, you're going to make whatever you're making, at the core of it, you would just want to create things out of something that was a lesser thing before that. So I take a tree, whatever. You take a piece of iron ore and turn that into, you smelt it down and make a piece of metal out of it, and then you forge it into something else, if you want to go back that far into the process, but you're still making something out of something lesser, and you're able to create something tangible out of just an idea in your head, which is what a maker really is. And then the medium is just icing on the cake. It's just some direction you go with it, whatever way you feel comfortable expressing yourself in, which is why I think you see a lot more like the mixed media things these days, because people kind of finally discovered that it doesn't really matter. You don't have to be like set in one medium. You can mix them. You can mix and match. You can go in different places and do different things, because it's at the end of the day, it's you with the idea in your head, and however it is that you get the idea out of your head and into the physical world, you know, do whatever you want.
Excellent. You should put all that on a T-shirt. That would be an awesome T-shirt.
It'll be a long T-shirt.
Well, it would be a long T-shirt. Maybe like a cape with all that on it. But yeah, that's an excellent point. Yeah, well said. I totally agree with you. Well, it's after 10:30. I don't want to keep you. Matt, thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it. And there's a lot more questions, so we'll have to have you back on again sometime in the future, and we'll do it again.
That'd be awesome. This was a lot of fun. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, and congratulations. Everybody tweet at Matt or on Facebook or something. Tell him congratulations on his upcoming baby. That's awesome. All right, guys, thank you so much for your questions, for hanging out with us tonight. And don't forget, 3 weeks from tonight, Kyle Toth going to be on BrainPick. And so make sure you go watch everything he has, check out all his projects and all that stuff. And we'll see you then. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.